So what I thought we would do is just start with each one of our soldiers here telling us a little bit about who they are, why and what they were doing before they joined the Army, and why do you want to jump out of an airplane, for crying out loud? Vince?
Do I have to go up there?
No, you just talk from right there. You're fine.
Folks, I was an 18-year-old kid right out of high school, and as I left for the service, my father, who had walked me to the train station, hadn't said a word all the way there. When we got there, just before the train pulled out, he said, "Figlio mio, non fa mai una cosa per farmi lavi la testa," which means, "Son, just don't do anything to make me hang my head in shame." Added to what our teachers had been telling us and what the Army taught us and so on, another one of the motivations for us to win that damn battle was pride in yourself, your family, and believe me, it works. Those words stayed with me forever. As the man told you, the 101st Airborne Division, in which I served, H Company 501 Parachute Infantry Regiment, was beat up in Holland. It had lost 3,000 men. It had to leave most of its equipment and the normal food supplies that a division has and ammunition on hand had to be left in Holland. They came out of Holland battered and were supposed to get 90 days of rest, rehabilitation, and replacements, and it didn't happen. Nobody knew it, neither British intelligence or American intelligence. The Germans had saved up 25 divisions, 9 of them Panzers with their newest tanks, the Tiger Royals and the Mark IVs, and were on their way on December 16th to Antwerp. The idea was, from Germany, go across Belgium, through the Ardennes, capture the port of Antwerp, which was our port of entry, and deny us the supplies, have the supplies for them, separate the British and Canadian armies in the north from the American armies in the south, which would have changed the war. Their problem was, to get from Germany to Antwerp, they had to funnel through the Ardennes, and there was a little town here called Bastogne, of which I am one of the battered bastards of the bastion of Bastogne. And Eisenhower said to the 101st Airborne Division, get up there and hold them. That battle lasted 8 days. The question remained, how was 12,000 Americans in that town going to hold off 56,000 well-equipped Germans with 1,000 of their tanks? We had 73. And the worst winter that Europe had ever had. We had not been issued our winter clothes. We were short of ammunition and short of this and short of that. And at the end, we were down to 1K ration a day. We prevailed because battles are not won necessarily by who has the most men, who has the most equipment, who has the air cover, none of which we had. My friends, battles are won by what's in the heart of the individual soldier who digs a hole in the ground and puts a bayonet on the end of his rifle and says, I don't give a damn what you throw at me, you're not getting by my foxhole. For 8 days, we held off that group until Patton came through on the 26th and so on. Now, I wrote a book, it's in the book. The details of the battle are just people who would not give up. And cocky German troops there for a while there, they thought they were going to sweep through there just like they had destroyed the 4 American divisions that were holding the Ardennes line. And it didn't work. The way it ended up, we were slaughtering them 7-1, and of course, we lost a lot of people too. But, I do a lot of speaking. My message is the same all over. My friends, freedom is not free. Americans are born with a desire for freedom in their hearts, and they're going to defend it every place it goes where it's threatened. And when I speak to the young paratroopers and other soldiers and so on, I tell them, my friends, pay attention to your training, keep yourself in good shape, always try to excel, never mind getting bored with training, because it seems like evil will always exist in the world, and those of us who object to it are going to have to do something about it, and that involves your sacrifice, my friends. Everybody has got to do his share to keep America free.
Well, Tom, why don't you tell us, what were you doing before the war, and again, why jump out of airplanes? Where did that come out?
Yeah.
Do you want to take a shot at that, Henry?
Yeah.
Sir,
Okay.
you have to raise your voice.
I'm sorry. Sure.
What's the question?
Why did you, Henry? What were you doing before the war, and why jump out of airplanes? How did you end up jumping out of airplanes?
Well, before the war, I was in high school, and I was in 12th grade, and there was a group of the boys decided that maybe it'd be a good thing to get in the service. Well, 42% of my class at that time left high school and I went into service, various service, Army, Navy, Marines, you name it. And I, of course, thought I was going to go into the Paratroopers because coming out of the Depression, $1 meant quite a little bit to me. And I know they paid pretty good. So I joined the Paratroopers. And I found out later, you earned the money. As a young man growing up during the Depression, we learned the value of $1 because we didn't have $1. You might have 50 cents, but anyhow, that was the reason I really joined the service. And I was a volunteer, as all paratroopers were volunteers. We were not drafted. We were there on our own accord because we loved our country and we wanted to serve our country. And after Pearl Harbor, we all had that eager notion to go into the service, which I did, and many others. So I spent my first few months training out of Camp Cook, California as a combat engineer, as a demolition expert. And in the invasion, I would be the one to either blow the bridges or take the demolitions from the bridges if they were wired. And after I did my job, then I was infantry. And coming through England, we had plenty of action as far as night jumps. Jumps, I was one of those guys that liked to jump out of airplanes. And during training...
Why is that? What is it about jumping out of airplanes that you like?
Jumping out of airplanes? It was kind of like a carnival thing to me, but not really. I left Camp Cook, went to England. We had quite a bit of training there, very rigorous training. That's one thing about the paratroopers, even in basic training, you either got through everything, and it was very rigorous. Most of the guys will tell you the same thing. If you didn't, well, you were out, period. If you refused your last fifth jump, you were out. You go back to the infantry. But through all the training and that, and in England training, we got ready for the invasion. And during the invasion, we got our planes together. I came from one airfield. I think we had about 4 airfields or 5 airfields to get the guys all together because there were so many planes that they couldn't handle them in one airport. So after we got them all together, I happened to be the man in the door because I had a demolition pack attached to my ankle. When I jumped out, it would go out with me because if we couldn't hold the bridge, I had to blow it. We got circling over the North Sea, and as we circled there, I could look down. It was such a nice moonlight night. I could see all the ships down there. And I think I could have walked to England on ships. And when I looked up above, there were the bombers going over, and then the fighters above them. I thought, oh my, we could never lose this war. Look at all the material. And I might have been mistaken. After we got our group together and we came over Cherbourg, we took quite a bit of flak. And I seen one plane go down that had a direct hit. The troopers, of course, all in those were killed. And I saw one plane that went down, and the guys must have been trying to get out of the door because there was a couple of chutes open, and after that there was none. The flak was so heavy, and I think all the guys know that. They passed through there. The flak was so heavy that it looked like the 4th of July out there, anywhere from 20 millimeter to 60 to 88s to machine guns. It was all going after us. And those little transports carried 18 men, and it was very slow moving. It probably was a pretty good target. And when we got over Cherbourg, a little bit more inland, we hit fog, and the guys' planes started dispersing a little bit. And finally, by the time we was ready to jump, why, we was over the city of Sainte-Mère-Église. And
Just not where you're supposed to be.
I, being in the first man in the door, I made it out, and I went down through the greenhouse, and good thing I had that leg pack on ahead of me because it broke a hole through there, and I didn't get cut up. So I dispersed with all my equipment and that, just what I was carrying on my body, and there was firing going on over in the church area, and I was supposed to go down to Chef DuPont, the bridge down at Chef DuPont. And by the way, a lot of our guys jumped and they fell into the water, and the water was anywhere from 5 to 10 feet deep, and with all the equipment that we had on, they drowned. And it was a big mistake of the people higher up that they didn't know about the water, because I think they thought it was probably a grassy field because it had a lot of overgrowth in it too. But nevertheless, we lost a lot of boys from that. And my job, going down to Chef DuPont, I got down there, and already the 508 had been in and held the line, so I didn't have to do anything down there. So I dug a foxhole and was kind of just taking it easy for a while there. The Germans hadn't really gotten too much pressure on the other side of the dike. We did not hold both sides, but we did hold the important side, and that was the river, the ocean side. Because if those bridges hadn't been held, the success of the invasion would have been in doubt, because if they could have got tanks and troops down to the beach on those roads were the only things standing above the water. On both sides, it was flooded. So the bridges and the roads were the important things.
Yes, and there were several choke points, and actually your story is repeated throughout Normandy, with different units jumping in and men really being where they weren't supposed to be, and yet doing a phenomenal job. Now, here's one thing though I want to know. Tom, you're 100 years old?
That's right.
You did a jump, did you? Huh? Did you do a jump?
Yeah.
Well, good for you. I tried to, my wife wouldn't let me.
When was your last parachute jump?
2 weeks ago.
Good for you. Good for you. I had a chance, I couldn't do it. My wife wouldn't let me.
If we can, why? Explain to the audience, well, first of all, how you got into the Army and why you love jumping.
Why did I jump?
Why did you jump?
Stupid intelligence. I was a risk taker.
Were you?
Yeah, really. And I learned that, and in depth for the most part. My father was in the Navy, and we grew up in Coronado. And I didn't know him too well because he was killed in a naval air crash in 1934. So we moved from Panama area to San Francisco for a year, and then came to Coronado in the property that he owned. So I lived there for the most part, graduated from Coronado High School in 1940. That was a great year for that. And just getting us just ready for the most part to do the important things. Aviation was the key thing in Coronado. It was prime. There are more admirals and captains in Coronado than you can possibly imagine. And so it was a dynamic community, very intelligent community, and it was a school that was prestigious in graduating. There was only one college south of LA, and that was San Diego State College. So in 1940, I joined the San Diego State College. I was there for 2 years, 1942, and then enlisted directly into the 501 Parachute Infantry Regiment at Camp Toccoa, Georgia. A little mountain that had its top cut off for the most part, and it was a secret CCC camp. It was 13 miles from Toccoa and on Highway 13, so that number 13 was rather ominous for me because several things occurred along the line that scared the dickens out of me as a salubrious little kid coming from a quiet little island such as that. I was the richest kid in town because Coronado was covered with gophers and horned toads and rabbits. And gophers were worth 25 cents a piece. I was on the track team and ran the half mile. And I was capturing gophers, and I would take them to the fire department, bang on the pole, the fireman would slide down, and I'd give him the gopher, and he'd give me a coin, and I'd take it to the city hall and get 25 cents. So my money was based on gophers, but it being on the track team, some of them found out that they could impede my richest sources and do me in a little bit. So when I took a gopher to the fire department, banged on the pole, the fireman slide down, and he would look at it, he would take it and throw it in the trash, and I'd go around and get it again. So that made up for my losses. But I was caught up on that because they cut one leg off, and you can't get anything from a third leg gopher.
So you had to become a paratrooper.
So there's humor in all kinds of activities that we engaged in. So I My serial number was 19164859. I was a volunteer. I volunteered for everything. I loved the United States Army, but I'm not so sure about the bozos that came in as draftees, because they came from all over the United States, and some of them came from farms, and they didn't know right from left. So we had to design a method whereby they could march properly. So it was hay foot, straw foot, hay foot, straw foot, and they fell into it rather easily then.
Well, that would be tough on the city folk, though, wouldn't it? So now you jumped in, I believe, did you jump in on D-Day?
Yes, I jumped on D-Day.
So whereabouts did you land? Maybe tell us, what went on when you hit the ground.
You want me to leap forward to D-Day? Okay.
You go wherever you want to go.
All right.
You're in charge.
All right. We trained for 13 weeks in Tacoma, and then went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and did the jumps there and phased A, B, C, and D. A was physical education, and we were in superb physical education, physical condition, and the instructors there wore T-shirts half the size of their body and their muscles bulged. And we did things wrong on purpose just to antagonize them, because we knew we could get away with it. We would do maybe short T-shirts, or rather short push-ups and pull-ups and whatnot. They'd come over and growl at us and make our hair stand on the back of our heads as we stood at attention. You got 25 more to do. Which arm, Sergeant? That threw them for the loss. So C, B, and A phases all worked us into parachute activities, and we'd made 5 jumps in Normandy at the end of June, or rather April, and then got a 7-day furlough and came home. Coronado, for the most part, was a dead city because it was just being evacuated by the citizens. It was a primary target. And the street lights are still out today on the basis of that. From Fort Benning, Georgia, we did the Tennessee maneuvers. And from the Tennessee maneuvers, we went to Camp Mackle. And from Camp Mackle, we went to England and on a slow boat to China almost. And I had bumps on both sides of my jaws, and that was a painful thing. So I was kept in isolation for a period of time. I took about 10 guys to a military hospital in England, and after 10 days, we rejoined our units. So that at Lambourne, England. Others went to Hempstead and certain other communities thereabouts. We had 3 practice jumps placed before us. Eagle, beaver, and you guys remember any one of the others? Vince, you remember the third one?
I'm sorry?
No, you didn't.
No, this is 101st, so.
Beaver, eagle, and tiger were the 3 practice jumps. 2 were day jumps, 1 was a night
Right.
jump. And on the night jump, the German bombers were over, so they put us back down on the ground, and 525 in the 101st didn't jump, but they made up for it later. After the 5 jumps, for the most part, were finished, we were relocated closer to our airdromes. There were 11 small airdromes in the vicinity. We were stationed close to Merrifield, and we would have a number of jumps placed before us. We'd move to the Merrifield area, get our supplies, etc., and no ammunition was given, and I knew we didn't go then. But just prior to that, we had made the jump in Normandy at Merrifield, and I was in section number 16, 45 C-47s in a group of 3s. The lead plane had an instrument called Rebecca, and the pathfinders on the ground at one of the drop zones, A, B, C, or D, for the most part, that straddled the raised causeways from the English Channel to the interior were misdropped. The 501 had the worst misdropping in the history of airborne activities in aviation.
Which is saying a lot,
Beg
by
your
the way.
pardon?
Yes, please continue.
Yeah, we were spread all over the creation, about 125 miles square, where from place to place and point to point. And I didn't see my company commander for a whole week. So we moved about in small groups, and we moved in the evening and hid out in the daylight, and the farmers gave us milk and cheese and bread and whatnot, so we were very well secluded. The things that we like to do was now creativity. We created so much chaos that it was unbelievable. We had to capture and hold causeways A, B, C, and D so that the 1st Infantry Division and the 24th could move through us. And when they came in, they did that. A Lieutenant Briere, who graduated from VMI a couple of years before that, was General Taylor's bodyguard, and he had a platoon of about 3 to 4 men, and he was detailed to go to Utah Beach and contact Captain Mabry of the 24th Infantry Division and note the exact time that contact was made. It was made at 11:04 a.m. June 6th, and any other time, as noted by any other historian, is not correct. It was 11:04.
Uh-oh, I better go back and make some revisions then.
On the way, Lieutenant Prieur was traveling with his men. He saw a small house and inspected it just in case there were Germans there, and he found a German that was a bread salvage. He still had a good trigger finger, but he had some other ailments, and he was wounded and leaning up against a wall with his rifle just within reach. And he was moaning and groaning, and when the Americans came in, he got quite frightened about it. Lieutenant Briere took his rifle, took the bolt out, threw it in one direction, broke the butt and threw it in another direction, and told him he'll come back and help him. After he contacted Lieutenant Mabry, or Captain Mabry, he returned and he found the German dead with his ring finger cut off.
Wow.
So atrocities occur on both sides.
Absolutely, and that is one thing that we sometimes forget.
We were also souvenir hunters too, but you never take a German souvenir and use it within your ranks. If you do something like that, you're running into real danger.
Absolutely.
So we jumped at 8:41. No, we took off at 8:41 from Maryfield in Section 16, and flew at 5,000 feet, and traveled over Portsmouth, which was named Code Bill Portsmouth, and dropped down to 1,500 feet to get another German radar, and then 2 miniature submarines in the channels gave us signals that we were on track. We flew up the Bay of Aqaba, and another submarine turned his signal on, and we went left at that point. We entered the Continent Peninsula at Barnesville, and I was in the door, and I was jump number 1 in every jump I made.
Really?
I led the guys out. Lieutenant Jansen was the jump master, and number 18, Marvin Van Buskirk, was the pusher, and we could unload that aircraft in 15 to 20 seconds, more closer to 10 though, really, when things got really tough. So as we turned into the area of Barnesville, I was looking out the door and I could see it was low tide. The water was flowing from the east to the west, downhill into the English Channel. The Douve River, D-O-U-V-E River, was the main body of water, and it was always deep and running fast. And it cut quite a groove between Sainte-Mère-Église and Charenton, along with its tributaries, the Jordan and Madeleine River. So after we had stood up and hooked up, and there's a steel cable that runs from the pilot's cabin to the aftership, and we hook up on that. Lieutenant Jansen would go to number 18, pat him down, and make sure that his arm was not fouled up with the static line. We would jump static line for this part.
Right.
What did we have in the bundle slung underneath the aircraft? Our heavy machine guns, ammunition, and probably a load of ping pong balls. Just in case we landed in the
Just in
English
case they had
Channel.
a
You
float.
know.